Okay. Good morning, guys. I'm Hannah Perkey. I'm CEO of Evelo team with Keller Realty, joined by Bob Warner, one of our most senior real estate agents, and I'd say kind of our local economist here of the team that brings all the data to us. So we're going to jump in today and just share about what's happening in the real estate market here in Central Indiana. So Bob will just jump in with our regular questions that keep people informed. So tell us what happened in the local housing market here in July.
Absolutely. So, like you said, we'll just kind of jump right into it. First up is always that median sales price. So we ended July at 320, which was actually up 7% over last July. So that was probably our biggest single month jump so far this year. So we'll kind of see where that trend continues to go. That cumulative or kind of median days on market that ended at 12. So again, that looks like a pretty big jump in comparison to last year, being a little bit over 33%. But when you compare 12 days to 9 days, that's the reason for the big jump, but still a pretty small number. Especially considering if you kind of look here, we did cross, got pretty close to 30, over 30, close to 35 at the beginning of the year. So you can see those kind of spikes. We'll probably see that again this winter. So we'll track that a little bit more closely. That month supply of inventory, again, historically, a balanced market has been considered a 4 to 6 month supply of inventory. Most people nowadays are probably going to say balance might be closer to 3 to 4 months. We're kind of seeing and adjusting. So we did crack 2 months, which we've seen some of that in our winter months, but it's been a while since we've kind of crossed 2 months at sort of the summertime. But we are coming out of our peak season, and that was up about 25% year over year. So we'll continue to see where that goes. The next slide up is that average percent of list price received. So again, it's some of the peak of the pandemic years, 2020 to 2022. We were seeing averages of 102, 103%. So we're at 98.5% for the month of July, which was almost flat over last year, just down just a tiny bit.
I think that month's supply of inventory was good that you touched on that of what's considered a balanced market. I was talking to a potential client over the past few weeks and like, yeah, it's a buyer's market here, right? Like just based on what they had kind of been seeing and feeling. I'm like, no, it's different than 2 years ago, but it's still a seller's market, getting closer to that balance, right? But not there yet.
Yep.
Right, so on that, what additional items have you been tracking in the shifting market to kind of anticipate that?
Yeah, some of those other items, we've kind of tracked this active inventory. So we ended July at a little over 6,300 units. That is a pretty significant jump from last year, up almost 24%. And we talked last month where it had been a while before we crossed over 5,000 units. And last month was the first time we've done this where we've crossed over 6,000 in quite a while. So we're staying a little bit above that. So we'll continue to see where that goes. So obviously, the more active listings there are, generally means that that month supply of inventory and the days on market is kind of go up correspondingly. So we saw that in the previous slides. Closed sales, however, they're pretty flat. They're down 1.4%. Again, pretty similar in units. Last year, 3,180. This year, 3,134. So we'll see how that continues on. The number of new listings was up a little bit this July at a little over 3,800. Last year, we were a little over 3,600. So that was up almost 5%. And then that next one we do like to track because I think it's important, especially as you get into like the hyper local areas of our market, because when you look at averages overall, that's a pretty big area encompassing many counties in central Indiana. But if you were really to break that down into certain towns or townships or something like that, things can be vastly different. But still saw 19.1% of all homes sell for close for over list price. So in addition to that list to sales price ratio, we like to track the percentage that are closing over list price because that's still pretty relevant in some areas. So that was down a little bit from where we were at this time last year, but that still is almost 1 in 5 homes in our entire market area is selling for over list price. And if we were to again kind of focus that in a little tighter areas, it could be as much as 1 in 2 or 1 in 3, depending on where we were.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting thing as you talk to your real estate advisor, if you're thinking about selling, is what does it look like in your specific area? Because that's the thing right now is we do have some homes that may have time to sit there and need to be aggressively priced, and others that we can expect to see multiple offers. So it really is very location and type of home specific right now is what we're seeing. All right, what about interest rates currently?
Yeah, so we are down a little bit again from where we were when we did this last month. So last month when we did this little presentation, we were at 6.72. We're at 6.58 for the week ending last week. And so that's down about 0.14. And as we talked about last month, we've really just been in this steady flat range for more than a year now, which is reasonably encouraging. Yes, rates are still far higher than they were before 2020, but we're not seeing these erratic spikes that we have seen over the last couple of years, and they've really been between 6.5 and 7 going back to last fall. So that's encouraging to see that they've kind of stabilized, continue to stabilize, and seem to be coming down ever so slightly over the last couple or 3 months. Again, we're talking tenths of a percent, no significant differences, but still, those are little improvements and stabilizations that are helpful.
Awesome. All right, any final thoughts about the market right now that we should be thinking about?
It's been a while since maybe we've talked about new construction specifically, so I just pulled up a little slide for that today. You know, maybe like kind of three advantages of buying a newly constructed home today. You might have some more. What I always tell people is if new construction is happening in the geographic area that you're looking for a home in and it's within your budget, I think it's worth exploring, right? You could potentially have more options. You might get a better price than you expect. Builder inventory has kind of maybe become a little bit more balanced as they catch up to the craziness that happened during the pandemic. So they've had some good pricing incentives and good options recently. And then one of the other things, a lot of them have been pretty aggressive in terms of buying down interest rates to where you could get an interest rate that's pretty favorable compared to the market overall. And as long as you're signed up, sort of getting maybe some incentives on price, purchase price, and mortgage rate, you might actually have quite a bit more buying power with a newly constructed home than, say, an existing home, right? It could make the difference between maybe you're able to buy a $250,000 home existing on market, where a new construction home with the price incentives and the mortgage incentives, you might be able to be in the low threes. So just depending on what your needs are and where you're looking, I think it's always something to consider when you're thinking about buying a home.
Absolutely. I'm glad you shared that. I was sending out some new construction closeout opportunities, right? Where a neighborhood was finishing out. They had taken a mid $300,000 property, knocked it down 40,000, and there were financing deals going on. So you're absolutely right. It makes those homes attainable when maybe you wouldn't have thought so. And we're here to explain that. I know sometimes that stuff can be complicated. So we're here to partner with your lender of choice and see if we can help figure out what that looks like. If you guys have questions about new construction, we do a lot of work with builders and really enjoy that piece of our jobs as well. I think that's it. So we appreciate you guys joining us. We like to keep it short and sweet, but get you the facts so that you're educated as you come in to consider buying or selling in Indiana. If you have any other questions or any location specific information as it relates to a certain neighborhood or area, definitely reach out. Bob and I would be glad to help with that. We'll put our contact info below, and we hope you have a great Monday and rest of the week. Thanks so much. Bye bye.